Hey guys, Kyle here. So, just before the show starts, I wanted to mention our Patreon. You can pay us $1 a month as a thank you, as a tip. You can pay $2 a month to get access to one of our bonus content shows, episodes 2 days early, and a secret Discord chat where all of our Patreon donors get to go and hang out and talk with us directly. Then there's a $5 tier that you can donate to get access to a whole bunch more content. We have multiple bonus episodes on there, so please check it out. Patreon.com/itgetsweird. We don't advertise, we don't make money, so check it out and throw some money if you think that would be cool. Thanks. Welcome to It Gets Weird, our comedy show where we explore the unusual, the unbelievable, and the unexplained to try and make your world a little weirder. I'm Kyle.
And I'm Niall. And this week, I'm keeping the incense rolling. My little frog incense guy is
nice,
keeping me nice and smooth.
Refer to part one of this series to get
I figured
info drop.
Look, I completed the story arc of the Dirty Do on the bonus feed, so I feel like for a part two here, I needed to revisit the vibes of episode 1, because last week,
sure,
for those that don't remember, I came in very open-minded, ready to be greeted with knowledge that I would take in and believe and take to heart, and we ended up talking about a UFO case that unfortunately is not like that. You weren't telling me about like some crazy human evolution thing. We weren't talking about like something that is a great leap of belief. But I guess aliens are. But anyway,
yeah, I mean,
we got into an interest. It became, look. Sometimes I'm very open to the fact that aliens abducted this woman.
Well, there's going to be a little bit more mentally. Ooh, no, can't say that like that. Mental things that will stretch your mental capacity a little bit in this episode.
Okay.
I had to be careful about how I described. I was about to.
We're about to do this thing I do at work sometimes where I'm trying to come up with like a thing that will solve a problem in a room, and I'm giving like different versions of the solution, and I almost write in emails that here's the final solution. Yeah, I do that about once a month.
That's what I was about to do, basically. Yeah. No, this is going to be a bit more of a mental stretch because, I mean, so I don't know if, you've given up on the whole, I'm going to choose to believe everything you tell me. That was just a part 1 thing, and part 2 we're just saying, fuck all this, I won't believe a word of it. Is that we're going the opposite direction?
I guess we could. I was trying to enter in with at least a level of Mulder I want to believe,
Okay. Well, that works. Yeah, this one is going to be where we get into the more wild stuff.
Okay.
This is the weirdest part of the story. So this is part 2 of the Stanford, Kentucky abduction, which this UFO got a 3-for-1. If you somehow didn't listen to part 1, this is 3 women in Kentucky late at night getting abducted by a UFO. And there's missing time. We still don't know what happened during that missing time. But I bet
we'll find out by doing some some hypnotic regression.
Yeah, yes we will, Niall. The 3 women are Mona Stafford, Mary Louise Smith, and Elaine Thomas. I would just like to say that I have read so many different accounts and articles on this story at this point. This ended up getting into 2 parts. This does not cover every single detail. If you want to find every single nitty-gritty detail about this story, my recommendation is to go out, look at the sources I mentioned in episode 1, who I'm also using for this episode, plus another one that I make mention of in this episode. Go check it out. I tried to get as many interesting and relevant details as possible. I just, there's a lot. There's a lot to this. Sure. So yeah, Mona, Mary Louise, and Elaine, as I call them, I'd like to kick off this part 2 by talking about some additional details from one of those 3 major recountings of this story that I got my info from. So remember, we have APRO, who is showing up a day after MUFON is there, and MUFON is telling them, fuck you, we're first, basically.
Yeah. The classic forum first, you know?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's the YouTube post. You know, on Britney Spears' Vivo first. That's the first comment. I mean, you could pick any artist Vivo, but that's the one that I went with because that was the first one that came to mind.
It is really funny to think that the main vestige of Vivo as a website is putting Vivo in your YouTube channel. You know, like that's the main place I see the word Vivo. Do people still watch? Is Vivo still like a going concern?
I don't know. Do you think that we would get more views if we just put It Gets Weird Vivo up on our YouTube? Like maybe we should try that.
I think it would be funny. I don't know if it would like help our SEO, but
somebody's clicking out like, oh, it's an hour and 40-minute long music video. Interesting. I got to check this out.
Yeah.
There's interfactional difficulties between the people trying to investigate this UFO case. They all want the scoop. So we've got APRO, we've got MUFON, who I guess was technically there first, and then CUFOs, who I believe is the Center for UFO Studies, which I think at this time was associated with Dr. J. Allen Hynek, who comes up in this story.
Okay.
So, the other account that I was reading from is Otto Billig, who does the psychohistory of UFOs, which is interesting in and of itself. I don't go deep into his, analysis of this case plus the phenomenon itself, which would probably be worth talking about in another episode dedicated to it. But I do talk a little bit about it because, like so many of these stories, there are little extra details, little differences that I find interesting or weird or frankly confusing. And Otto Billig has some psychological analysis of these women that I find interesting too. By no means do I want to say that Otto Billig read these women for filth and that they were liars or whatever. I guess let me put it this way. What I think is clear with Otto Billig is that he does not believe that there is a UFO phenomenon of aliens coming to Earth and abducting people, which is fine. And he does make a point to sort of point out a problem that I do think is true, which is that a lot of the people involved in this story, in investigating the story, are already, they are predisposed to the UFO phenomenon, and it's probably the relationship they assume to alien life. Not everyone, but even if it's not necessarily that they're approaching from this perspective of like aliens are flying UFOs to Earth, they're still already UFO people. Like that, this is actually the thing that Otto Billig says in his book is like the 3 women got in contact with the quote unquote UFO people and were very comforted by the presence of the UFO people because it might offer some relief for the thing that they experienced. So it's contaminated before word 1 is exchanged, really.
Yeah, the objectivity of it is gone before any UFO researcher shows up.
Yeah. So
sure. Okay.
Otto Billig interviews these ladies many years after the incident. And he gets some interesting stuff. So we talked last episode about how there's different groups reporting on the story. Sometimes, actually, most of the time, it was well after the event happened. Like things are happening months after the actual event. Anyways, everything I just described serves to sort of get details minced up and scattered. And something I forgot to mention in the last episode, because I said last episode, like I'm confused about what's happening to their car when the UFO shines its beam down on them and messes with the controls of the car, right?
Because like at one point it's going backwards super fast, and you didn't know if it, and we couldn't figure out the exact timeline of how. Yeah, sure.
I couldn't tell. Okay, because what you'll find in the accounts is the speedometer hits 85 miles per hour. Okay, does that mean that the speedometer did that? And because she has her foot off the pedal, she's not like, did it hit 85 miles per hour with and wasn't moving, or was it moving backwards when it hit 85 miles per hour? It was very confusing. And here's what it says in Billig's retelling.
It just says sometimes the speedometer just does that.
yeah. It's like JFK's head. It's a JFK's head problem.
Yeah.
In Billig's retelling, the women explained that the speedometer hits 85 miles per hour, but the car simply, quote, did not move. So depending on who you read, the car either is frozen and it hits 85 miles per hour on the speedometer, or they're careening about the highway at 85 miles per hour and it's not under their control. It's a little weird. And the thing is, the earlier, like the more immediate investigatory, is that a word? That's not a word. Investigation, is it? Okay, investigatory. Fuck, I don't know.
Man, I was confident for a second, and now I'm not. Sometimes
with certain words, all you have to do is just crack that confidence, and then it's completely uncertain forever.
Look,
now.
the human language is just like a gentleman's agreement across all of humanity.
That is true.
So words evolve.
Well, so the early accounts are the ones where it generally sounds like what's happening is they are driving at 85 miles per hour. She takes her foot off the gas pedal and loses control of the car and all that. It's this later one where the car is like frozen, I guess.
Yeah. Well, you could bring in your speed consultant. I see him back there on top of your fucking dresser there. You got Sonic is just like sunbathing on top of Kyle's dresser right now.
Do you know what that is?
No, I mean I know it's the Sonic the Hedgehog, but
it is Sonic the Hedgehog. That's a chia pet.
Oh, you have a Sonic chia pet? Okay.
Yeah, it was given to me for Hanukkah from some friends. Shouts out. And I still haven't played. I have the chia seeds. I just haven't. I've never actually owned a chia pet, and I'm like nervous that it's just not going to grow. But that's what the Sonic the Hedgehog is. And I will say, this gift was given to me from people who are like, they knew me well enough that they were like, we specifically got this for you because it's classic Sonic, not modern Sonic. Yeah. So that is a classic Sonic chia pet.
Full-blown 90s representation.
So I'm glad you noticed that.
I do think it's interesting that there's, because like, it is not rare for there to be disparate details amongst recountings of UFO encounters. That is a common thing. But the idea of this level of like, because I almost wonder, do those accounts do you have any? I don't know if you would be able to tell me this, but are all those accounts were they all from the same time period, or did like, some accounts at this time period originally said this, and then later retellings changed it to this, etc.?
Well, what I actually wrote in my notes is that Billig's account is the one that comes much later. By like almost a decade, I want to say. Almost. And it's the one that differs the most, but also has some of the most detail.
Yeah.
The account that we have that is from way after the fact is there's a 2011 interview with Mona on news in Kentucky, where that's the one where they were talking about mysterious farmland that they could never find.
Yep.
I also found a guy. God, see, this is why I want to just be able to have the funds to just get up and travel to a location like this, because if I had the ability to, I would go to the library where I found this guy who was posting on YouTube about this event, whose family knew these women. Huh. He was doing some sort of like analysis work at a library that was local there, and he was like saying stuff to the effect of, my family told me that they knew these women, and if they said this happened, it happened. And there's like material at this library. If I had the means to and the time, I would straight up just go ASAP to that library in Kentucky and see what I could find. I'd be so interested in doing that. That's the kind of but that's what I'm working with here. Is I have all these accounts from the 70s and then clear up until like early 80s, and then radio silence, and then the 2011 interview, which is very brief. I don't even know if Mona Stafford is alive, but I know the other two women are dead.
Okay.
Which is a bummer because there's not a lot of information that extends beyond this like maybe 10-year period in which people are talking to them. And I would like to know if Mona Stafford is still alive. She was as of 2011, but she'd be like in her mid to late 80s, I want to say.
Yeah.
The other women were older when this all went down, so it's not that crazy that they're dead. But I also don't know exactly when they passed away.
Sure.
Anyways, it would be so I would kick down the doors to whatever nursing home Mona's in.
Yeah.
To get information from her about this story and see if she still has, if she's alive. If she's dead, I'm not going to rob her grave or whatever.
Yeah. Okay.
Which I don't know if you know this, but there is a very famous. I can't remember who this was. Somebody out there is going to listen to this and know exactly who I'm talking about. It's somewhere in my bookmarks, my giant bookmarks next to my folder on my browser that says 9/11 Revisited. Spoilers. There is a guy who wrote a book called Confessions of a Grave Robbing Ufologist. So I have to read that and get back to you on it. But that was the thing that I was like, I'm going to file that away because that sounds awesome.
Yeah, awesome is one word for it. It sounds interesting. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, sorry. Awesome means interesting. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. So, God, I'm really getting derailed. I'm letting myself derail myself. So, we have the weird discrepancy about what's happening to the car. I think what's generally accepted is the car is out of control and hitting 85 miles per hour. Billig's account is the one where it's extra weird, and I'm not sure what happened. So, from Billig's account, there's also some weird stories about the immediate psychological and physiological fallout of this event. This event is also reported in MUFON's account. This is generally pretty well known in the people who did the actual investigation. So Mary Louise would return home after the incident to her pet parakeet, who she had taken care of for 4 years. And reportedly, when Mary Louise approached the parakeet after the UFO abduction, it would, quote, shiver with fright and refuse to interact with her. And this was a strange new reaction to its owner. And in fact, in the MUFON account, they claim that they did an experiment where I think Len Stringfield and maybe one of the other investigators would go up to the parrot and have Mary Louise step back, and they would put their fingers in the cage, and the parakeet would be like, that's chill. And then Mary Louise would come up and get near the cage, and the parrot would freak out.
Sure. Very important experiments.
Yes. Well, the parakeet would apparently not behave this way with other people, just Mary Louise. And soon after the UFO event, the parakeet would stop eating, and within 3 weeks it died. So no dogs this episode. One bird down, I'm afraid. This is a bird death episode.
Yeah.
So MUFON, who gets the most this is the other thing also for people who maybe don't do the nerdy ass reading of UFO reports and investigations. If you ever wanted to know what it's like trying to get to the bottom of things with these stories, go read the APRO account and the MUFON account and compare them and how they're written, because MUFON is way more sensationalized and sort of like, remember how in episode 1 I was like, in the way they wrote about it, MUFON is appalled that Dr. Sprinkle is being brought in without their knowledge, you know?
Yeah.
That's how they write about it, whereas APRO is very, like, matter of fact, here are the details, you know, very dry.
Yeah, there was a lot more kind of subjective writing in the MUFON stuff you were reading than there was in the... And, like, I think that there is something to be said for the fact that, like, just because a report is lacking in adverbs, it doesn't necessarily mean it's more accurate. But I also think that, like, there is some coloration that can come from...
Yeah, if anything, it's basically just that, like, it belies their opinion on the events, you know? Like, the way they talk about the parrot, they say... Or they just straight up tell you what they believe about what's happening by doing stuff like this. Because in response to the thing about the bird, MUFON says this. Sorry, I should be specific. This is Len Stringfield writing for MUFON. And it says this. Could Mrs. Smith's traumatic state have rubbed off to affect the bird's sensorium, thus triggering its violent reaction? Or had she become a walking force field? There's two... The
only two options.
Of the leap.
It's got to be one or the other.
Yeah. It's just a little bit of a leap. So Mary Louise does report some of the strangest things after her night with the UFO. So I have Billig's account here. And this, a lot of this is quite eerie. So Mary Louise felt... Also, the other thing that was really annoying in doing this is... Billig, instead of using the names of these women, refers to them as Mrs. A, Mrs. B, and Mrs. C. So I had to constantly go and double check. I was like, okay,
thinking of the right person.
Who. Yeah.
That's the I love, like, I get why you want to do some level of kind of anonymity in reporting and stuff, but after the fact, it sometimes makes it harder to parse.
Yeah. So she would... The thing that I found interesting here is that she would feel like, quote, invisible forces were watching her. Like, ever since the UFO event, something that she could not see was watching her. And she would also believe that she was seeing orange discs in the sky on many different occasions, basically repeated UFO visitation. And that she could only see these UFO discs at night, and that they flew around at rapid speeds, and that they, quote, straight up and down, coming to a complete stop. And she even believed that they would follow her car. And she describes how one night she's completely overwhelmed by this feeling of someone staring at her, and so she just yells out, presumably alone, quote, "Look, leave me alone." So she is suffering. In fact, all 2 out of 3 of the women really suffer in this story. One of them, weirdly enough, seems to come out not unfazed, but rapidly manages to make a positive comeback in her life, which is interesting.
Okay.
So the other women had other bizarre experiences possibly linked to the night of the abduction. But before we get more into those details, I think it helps to have the context of the memories uncovered by hypnotic regression. And, of course, it has to be emphasized that there are some issues with our 2 other primary interlopers who I've mentioned, MUFON and APRO, and how they handled setting up the hypnosis session. So, I'm sorry. Yeah, we got a little bit into this, but I have more details on this that I find funny and interesting. I'm sorry, it's such an absurd amount of preamble to actually tell you, here's what they uncovered from hypnosis, but I feel like we should talk about it.
Okay.
So also I wrote in my notes here that there's so many other pieces of coverage of the story. I kind of said this already. Many of these stories get small details wrong, and so it makes somebody like me feel very frustrated. So another account that expands on the intra-investigatory trouble. Oh, I did write investigatory in my my notes. I'm out of my mind. This comes from the APRO co-founder Coral Lorenzen, who I also mentioned in episode 1. But she wrote a book called Abducted: Confrontations with Beings from Outer Space in 1977. I also mentioned how the National Enquirer got involved in all this. Well, remember,
that was fun.
There's more to it. MUFON had warned our 3 abductees not to talk to APRO, because if they associated with APRO, then they would also gain the attention of the Enquirer, because APRO had previously worked with the National Enquirer. This was, of course, on the basis that the 3 women wanted to avoid public ridicule, something which Billig brings up, that because there's this lapse in the investigations and stuff, and they're also, before they decide to even try to talk to people about what happened to them, they sat with terrible anxieties, and then once the story breaks, they did in fact receive ridicule from locals. And there's one where Otto Billig recounts, I believe, Mary Louise telling him that a boy on the street just randomly called her an astronut.
Got him.
Yeah, but this was all just, to point out that they did in fact receive ridicule from locals. It was not accepted with grace by everybody in the community that they had 3 abductees living amongst them. Anyways, they're trying to avoid public ridicule. Don't get the Enquirer involved, therefore don't get APRO involved. That's what MUFON is telling them. And when APRO learns that MUFON told them this, the women can't remember which member of MUFON told them that. Lorenzen does admit in her book that they had previously worked with folks from the Enquirer on a previous case, which was that of Sergeant Moody, a story I don't believe we've talked about on the show before, so
there you go.
Bookmark that. Lorenzen says this about the presence of the Enquirer. It was true that APRO had cooperated with the National Enquirer on some cases where their unlimited funds enabled them to get investigators to certain locations and keep them there for long periods of time, thus expediting cases which would otherwise take months to develop. It is a good working arrangement, as they are primarily interested in first publication rights of a case, whereas our first consideration is the results of an investigation.
Yeah, I can see that. It's like a decent way to get... National Enquirer has a bigger budget than most UFO organizations.
Yep.
And as long as they get a sensational article of some kind...
Yep.
Then
they get first rights.
You get to hang out there for months and do research, which is cool.
The APRO wants to conduct a thorough investigation, which requires money and time. And the Enquirer can provide them with money and time if they collaborate. Now, I do think it is maybe worth considering whether or not the Enquirer's presence can conflict with getting a good investigation, but I also do sympathize with what Lorenzen is saying here, like you said.
I don't know if it's like amazing, but it makes sense,
Yeah. Again, very long preamble to the actual hypnosis sessions, but I should say, for clarity's sake, that the actual official hypnosis sessions wouldn't occur until months after the UFO encounter. And to illustrate how badly hypnosis was fumbled, let's also talk a little bit about the timeline of events here leading up to it so that we can get into it. So, the original UFO encounter was on January 6, 1976. We covered that.
The original January 6th.
Yeah, they were the first January 6th, the insurrection of their minds?
The cosmos.
The capital of their minds? I don't know.
Yeah.
By February 12th, the story began to filter into the press. We talked about how that happened. MUFON investigator Jerry Black contacts MUFON HQ and ufologist Leonard Stringfield on February 20th. There's a series of phone calls, and the 3 Kentucky ladies are convinced to meet with MUFON investigators, and their official interview is arranged for February 29th. So MUFON folks go in, they meet up with these ladies on the 29th. Things are immediately suspect, in my humble opinion, regarding the integrity of the case, because MUFON mentions in their journal, Stringfield's like, oh, we brought an Ohio woman with us who we had invited, whose name was Peggy Schnell. And this was a woman who had prior experience with UFOs. And Len Stringfield says that this is to help keep the 3 abductees at ease, as well as to, quote, provide a reassuring feminine touch. Which is very funny. I mean, like,
sure.
I understand, but also it's just like, you're bringing a UFO person. You're a UFO person.
Yeah.
You're bringing an extra UFO person before you even get the story proper. We kind of mentioned this in episode 1, but all 3 women were experiencing various physiological problems, which everybody involved with the investigation does seem to be concerned with. One of the things that everybody agreed on is that all 3 women had alarming rapid weight loss.
Interesting.
In fact,
okay.
shit, I didn't write in my notes, but I know one of them was like sub 100 pounds at one point, which is, I think they said something like 25 pounds lighter. It's just very, very rapid and not healthy weight loss.
Sure.
So that same day of the meeting, February 29th, Stringfield and MUFON investigators apparently decided not to publicize the information that they got from that meeting, which was going over the case and figuring out, you know, their story, and you know, these physiological symptoms and whatnot. They decide not to publicize, and they cite concerns for the abductees' health. And then Stringfield contacts MUFON HQ as well as Dr. J. Allen Hynek at CUFOs to let them know to not publicize. They're going to keep this information locked down for now. Now, I have some very cynical speculation on my part, just given how shitty MUFON has been in this story. It does make me wonder if the point here was that they simply wanted to prevent information from getting out to other UFO investigation groups, to the extent that they could, because this is already in the media, right? But I don't know if the idea here was just like, we're going to lock this down because this is our story. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's definitely a reading of that, like, even if that wasn't the only goal of it, if they had some other purpose, it seems like it would be a factor, you know?
Yeah, I could be completely wrong, and they really were just like, let's lock this down because of health concerns, but because of how else they behaved during this investigation, which we'll get to some more of that momentarily, I don't know. I don't trust them. So then the competing faction, the competing organization, APRO, they first get the info on the case from field investigator Billy Terry, who saw the February 1st Kentucky Advocate article. I kind of mentioned this in episode 1. APRO ropes in Dr. Leo Sprinkle, bring him into the case, the trained regressive hypnotist. He's funded and flown out to Kentucky on March 5th, and then the plan is to have him do work on the 6th and the 7th. So already we're months removed from the sighting. January 6th, fast forward to March 6th and 7th. They've got the guy for 2 days, hoping to conduct hypnotic regression and get as much info about the case as they can. This is when they run into trouble with MUFON. So March 5th is also when news gets back to Stringfield, who's, I guess, working on behalf of MUFON, about APRO getting in on the story and that they're bringing Dr. Sprinkle into the mix as well. And this is where he's like, oh, I was having a nice dinner, and suddenly they're bringing me this news that Dr. Sprinkle's here. And I'm like, oh, well, I never, you know.
Yeah.
You know, people are frustrated. People want dibs. Calls are made between the organizations, and it's decided that this would be a joint effort. But this is after wasting an entire day worth of what I have come to call sprinkle time.
So, sprinkle time don't come cheap.
Sprinkle time is not cheap. I mean, they flew him out from what, fucking Wyoming, I think I said.
Yeah, something like that.
He's a professor at Laramie University, I think it was. So, they waste some valuable sprinkle time, which for them is working with this hypnotist. For me is a nice little time that I have with an ice cream sundae. So the way the MUFON side tells of it, the only person who is willing to this is another point where I was confused, and you'll see why. MUFON basically says in their journal, the only person willing to undergo hypnosis at the time was Mona Stafford, our birthday girl.
Yep.
On March 7th, investigators from both sides plus Dr. Sprinkle, they meet up with Mona at her parents' house, and Dr. Sprinkle does his thing. But because his time has been, wasted, it's not really sufficient for the investigation. He doesn't get a lot out of her. Nonetheless, the good doctor has to head home to do his regular job teaching at, like I said, Laramie University. Now, in this preliminary hypnosis session, you do get the immediate impression that the experience, whatever it was terrifying for Mona. In this way, it's not unlike many other hypnotic regression sessions because she breaks down in tears. She's put in hypnosis, and then they're asking her about things. She breaks down in tears. She's exhausted. She seems to be sort of reliving the night that she was abducted. But they don't get a lot of information about the memories of what happened during the approximately 80 minutes that they didn't exist or can't remember. But they also pull this mention of a strange, unexplained light in her memories. Now, here we have some more questionable behavior from MUFON investigators, because first, in the MUFON report, Stringfield says that as Dr. Leo Sprinkle was heading out the door to head back home, his time's up, he has to leave, the hypnotist pulled Stringfield aside and said that Mona was still in a post-hypnotic state, which meant that Stringfield could still, quote, work with her based on certain guidelines, whatever that means.
You can just play around with the hypnotic regression patient.
I don't know.
Go wild.
I don't know what. I feel like I would have to go and read a pretty comprehensive book about hypnosis to understand how real what he's saying is.
Yeah.
But it's funny because in the APRO bulletin, it's mentioned that beyond disputing who had control of this case, MUFON was also wanting to exploit the presence of Dr. Sprinkle, who they could not afford. APRO is the one who pulled him in. MUFON could not afford to, hire and fly out hypnotists.
Yeah.
So they were basically like, oh, APRO did it already. Let's exploit that and just use him because he's here. And APRO's like, this is our fucking guy. This is our money. This is our time.
Yeah.
Again, this is it's so ridiculous.
MUFON's just like, yeah, he's here anyway. Let's just can we just sneak in with it there a little bit? Yeah.
Yes.
That's I see why they feel shady. Yeah.
Yeah. So with Dr. Sprinkle gone, Stringfield describes something I mentioned in part 1. So she's post-hypnotic trance-like something or other. She's apparently still under the effects of hypnosis somehow. Mm-hmm. And Sprinkle leaves, and Stringfield pulls out a briefcase and produces sketches of humanoid beings that he had collected from previous UFO abduction cases.
Fuck yeah.
And he hands Mona the images to look over, and lo and behold, her eyes suddenly go wide and she exclaims, pointing at one of the humanoids. And Mona tells the investigators, quote, "This looks like the light I saw. It was shaped like that head." And moments later she adds, quote, "Yes, I can see the face now, but it doesn't seem solid. It comes and goes. I mean, fades and reappears like in a fog. Its eyes are far apart, and at the bottom, the chin is like that drawing." So...
Okay. What kind of humanoid are we talking here?
Kind of what you're picturing, like...
Okay.
Think of kind of like a gray, like a drawing of a gray.
Yeah.
Stringfield considers this moment a huge breakthrough, having, quote, pierced the barrier of the time lapse. So, this is essentially suggestive for the subject. This is before they are properly doing hypnotic regression. They have attempted it here, but it's sort of an insufficient version of a session. Mm-hmm. And this guy is basically like, tell me about the alien you saw, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
leading the witness for sure.
Yeah. And yeah, this contaminates, and APRO very much believes that this is a contamination of their efforts as well. So another thing that really confused me is that the MUFON Journal says that only Mona had consented to hypnosis at this time in the investigation, and that Louise and Elaine were omitted. But the other accounts, like the one from APRO, so they refer to Dr. Leo's report, which involves analysis of all three women. Like, he has an interview with all three women. It's only Mona who is put under hypnosis. But my point here is that MUFON is the only one that I saw that says 2 of the 3 abductees declined hypnosis at this point. Whereas APRO makes no mention of them declining, just that it almost sounds like there wasn't time to do hypnosis with everybody.
Sure.
And again, this is more speculation on my part. It makes me wonder if maybe the reason the other 2 women weren't put under hypnosis is because MUFON had thoroughly fucked the investigation. So I'm not saying this is what happened, just that maybe MUFON wanted some plausible deniability for having prevented Dr. Sprinkle from getting to the other 2 subjects. I'm not sure. They're the only ones who are like, they said no to hypnosis.
Yeah.
Everybody else is just like, yeah, they got to do interviews. Mona was the one who was put under. So I think maybe what happened here is that MUFON had wasted enough time that they only had him for a day, and they just
there wasn't enough sprinkle to go around.
There was not enough sprinkle to go around, and it's a big ass sundae. There's 3 of them. Mm-hmm. You got
3
chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry in that banana split, and you got to get sprinkle coverage over the whole thing. So I think that's what happened. Like, I don't know that for sure. This is me speculating. Because no account explicitly that I found says that this was that MUFON claiming that they had decided not to do hypnosis, that was their sort of like little quote soft cover up unquote of the situation. Maybe they really did initially decline hypnosis, but they were open to the next hypnosis session. And how did session 2 come about, you may ask? Well, you'll recall how the National Enquirer ended up involved in the story and roped Dr. Sprinkle back in for hypnosis. There's a big gap in the investigation, and then on July 1st, Stringfield receives a shocking phone call from Jerry Black. Check this out, Niall. This is delicious. This is from the MUFON Journal, written by Len Stringfield. Then came the sudden announcement on July 1st by Jerry Black, who, acting unilaterally, called Bob Pratt at the National Enquirer. He had made a deal. In concert with the 3 women, he basically had negotiated a swap of their close encounter story with the National Enquirer in return for the tabloids financing the return of Dr. Leo Sprinkle to Liberty, Kentucky, to conduct regressive hypnosis and a polygraph test to be conducted by an expert yet to be named. In the terms, Black agreed to the stipulation that if the time-lapse case turned out to be an abduction backed by professional testimony, the National Enquirer would get first rights to publish the story, and, in turn, the 3 women would receive remuneration for their cooperation. Black, Miller, and I were to pay all trip expenses out of our own pockets as we had done in the past. So, ironically, despite MUFON telling the abductees not to talk to APRO because talking to APRO would get the Enquirer involved, MUFON ends up using the exact same tactic that APRO had historically used with the Enquirer to get movers and shakers involved in the UFO investigation.
Yeah,
so
that's really funny.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Look, if you play both sides, you're going to come out on top.
And I think that if I remember correctly, I think it's Jerry Black who is insinuated as the guy who told the 3 women, don't talk to APRO, they'll get the Enquirer involved.
Mm-hmm.
So,
that's where he got the idea.
I really need to look into Leonard Stringfield, because he paints himself as such a, I can't believe that these petty squabbles were happening without me really knowing about it all the time. And I was so removed. It really I have to look into this guy and learn more about him. He's come up in stories before, but this is the one with the most, petty squabbling amongst UFO investigators. He looks weird.
That's such a textbook thing. The person that's like, man, all this drama seems really unnecessary is the one stirring the shit up a lot of the time. Look, I hope that's the case. I'm totally just projecting on this guy. But it sounds like he might be
I don't know.
A messy guy who likes drama. So.
I don't know. I'm just here having a nice dinner when I find out that APRO are competitors who can actually bring in a hypnotist because they have the money to do so are gonna jump in on our story. It reads so sus to me. Dear listener, if you know any, I do happen to know that there is some text on the sort of behind the scenes machinations of the various UFO orgs from this era. I know that exists. I just haven't read it yet, but I would like to. But dear listener, if you have some juicy goss, some hot goss that you want to email us, please, I would love to know.
I would love a book detailing the competitions of fucking...
I think something like that sort of exists. I want to say the book... Give me 1 second and I'll tell you. I believe this is actually this is a book that exists. I'd heard of it. It's and I think now you would know this guy's name from Saucers, Spooks, and Kooks, the documentary, because I believe he is in that, I think. But this is by Jack Brewer, who I follow him on social media. He has a book called The Greys Have Been Framed: Exploitation in the UFO Community.
Hell yeah. Okay.
And listen to this description. I have to get this book. My birthday's coming up. Somebody get this for me. It says, The Greys Have Been Framed: Exploitation in the UFO Community explores the ways deception, sensationalism, and questionable ethics characterize the UFO genre and distort public perception of the UFO phenomenon. Activities of credulous investigators of alleged alien abduction are considered, as are the roles of intelligence agencies in the theatrics. This sounds really good. I have to read this.
Yeah, that sounds like something that should be read for this podcast.
Yeah.
For sure.
So, I do believe it exists, is my response to what you said. So, Inquirer is involved now. They send out for Bob Pratty, who I think... So, at the time, the National Enquirer had, like, a legit UFO division. And Bob Pratty, I think, is one of their main guys for the UFO investigation division of the National Enquirer. Or, I guess, reporting. So... He comes in to conduct an investigation, and he also brings in Jack Young, who is the president of Professional Polygraph Consultants Incorporated, to conduct polygraph tests.
Sure.
And apparently the women passed a polygraph with flying colors, but Young also says this. This is also pretty juicy. This is what Young says. Prior to the examination of these three persons, it was determined by the polygraphist that these persons had been previously interviewed by Dr. R. Leo Sprinkle and the above-mentioned members of the Mutual UFO Network. How much or how little these previous interviews played a part upon what these persons now believe about this alleged encounter cannot be determined by the polygraphist. I cannot discount the fact that previous interviews with these persons could influence their personal beliefs as to whether or not this alleged encounter did or did not occur. So... Young immediately is just like, as a person conducting the polygraph tests, they all came across truthful when I was asking them stuff about the event. However, it's already fucked. Maybe.
Yeah. I like that the polygraphist, whatever you want to call them, is already like, you cannot take me saying that they think they're telling the truth as confidence that this thing that it actually happened that way, because that is like, polygraphs are a big lie in a way. Like, they don't do what people thinks they do. And like, I think the public consciousness is starting to catch up to that. Like, it was such a propaganda lie for such a long time, and I think that like people are starting to kind of catch on to what a polygraph is actually doing. So it's nice to see that. It's nice to see that get represented here.
Yeah. So in Coral Lorenzen's book, Additional shade is thrown at MUFON because she basically says that the policy of APRO for conducting investigations into cases like these is to, quote, withhold information about UFO history and other encounters when investigating a case, particularly when the case involves individuals who have little knowledge of the phenomena. That basically describes the three women who weren't, as far as I could determine from my reading, weren't really, super invested in UFOs and stuff before all this.
Yeah. They weren't card-carrying members of, like, a UFO organization or some shit.
Right, and exactly. But I wouldn't be surprised because by this point, UFOs are a big part of the sort of cultural consciousness, that they were aware of the phenomenon, but they weren't, they were not, UFO people.
And like, I like that as a rule for a UFO organization, to not come in and immediately start, like, talking about aliens to people you're trying to get, like, objective information from. It's a good rule.
Yeah, it's
thank you,
funny
APRO.
because even in just the names of the organizations, that sort of investigation ethic is sort of implicit in that. Aerial phenomena is more vague than UFO, which is much more culturally recognizable.
Yep.
So it's it is interesting. So Dr. Sprinkle had previously been a panelist for the Inquirer's Blue Ribbon Panel, which was a group of UFO researchers, scientists, and consultants tasked with analyzing UFO cases and evidence. It's a story for another podcast episode, I'm sure. They even had a thing where they were like, we'll give you $50,000 if you can provide us with concrete UFO evidence. And so you would send it into them, and then they'd hand it off to this panel who would tell you whether or not it was indisputable proof of UFOs.
Yeah.
Anyway, Dr. Sprinkle had served on the Blue Ribbon Panel and was thus the point of contact for the Inquirer for this job. So he once again found himself being pulled back to Kentucky as the lead hypnotic regression specialist for the Stanford Abduction case. So we've really beat around the bush here. What exactly was retrieved from the locked away missing time memories of Mona Stafford, Mary Louise Smith, and Elaine Thomas? Well, I'm going to go person by person here, starting with Mona Stafford. So, and this is, again, an amalgamation of different accounts. It's Leo Sprinkle, it's the interview with Otto Billig, it's the sort of impressions left on the UFO investigators. Mona, it seems, was the one who was the most willing to get into the hypnosis procedures. It seems she had come to believe that it would be good relief from the anxiety she'd been feeling ever since that fateful night. So she recalls being taken from her car and being placed on a white table, or perhaps a bed. Niall, did you ever play the video game Control?
No, I didn't. I watched you play it for like half an hour.
Oh, man, okay.
But haven't played it yet.
There's this, like, interdimensional question mark entity or group of entities called... What were they called? They're called, like, the Board or something like that. Like, BOARD. It's been a while since I played it. But they would do this thing where as they would talk to you, they would have two different words that were meant to sort of describe the same thing. So it's sort of hard to explain. But when she's like, it was a table/bed, she's not sure which. I feel like almost in her recounting, it's kind of like that, where like the word basically means the same thing, and this happens multiple times in her regression.
Yeah.
So table/bed. Folks who played Control, you know what I'm talking about. You'll see what I mean. She remembers a large eye watching her. So Dr. Leo Sprinkle's like, there's an eye that watches her, and in another writing of this account, that eye is like, it's like flashing and red, and it's large. Eye of
That's its
Sauron.
weak spot. Go for it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. She never really... See, if she'd had video games, maybe she would have just defeated this boss.
Yeah. Hadn't been properly trained yet.
So yeah, this eye would be a recurring theme for Mona. She remembers a bright white light shining down on her from above, and that this may have had some sort of energy that was capable of, quote, transfixing her in a way that, to me, it sounds like she's being put into a trance where she doesn't feel compelled to move. Which I think is slightly different than being actually paralyzed physically, you know?
Yeah. One is a mental thing and is a physical thing.
Yeah.
Sure.
However, she does recall sensing that her right arm was being pinned or fastened down, and that her left leg was being forced underneath her body, and that she felt pain in her ankle and foot. And she sensed that the fingers of her left hand were being squeezed by something. When I was reading her account, it was the most... This is an image that has come up with UFO abduction stuff before, but it was the most I'd ever been like, oh, this is like pinning an insect to a board.
Yeah.
Is what it feels like. It's creepy.
Yeah, it's all like... There is something kind of clinical to it where it feels like she is, if we're going with this account, being treated as some sort of lesser being.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
The way that we would
like a human looking down on a
or
lowly insect.
a specimen.
Yes, a specimen, exactly. Because it's clinical, but it's haphazard in that there wasn't care taken in... Like, you get a lot of these accounts where people are sort of like straight and paralyzed and stuff. And here she's just... My arms are pinned down in weird ways. My leg is underneath me.
She's in the fucking Peter Griffin knocked out pose, you know? Crumpled up in a heap.
Yeah. Exactly. I didn't go there, but I didn't think about it like that, but you're right. So she's pinned down, and these weird things are happening to her. There are beings there. 4 or 5 short humanoids wearing surgical masks and surgical outfits, and they're examining her.
Like humanoid. Earth. No, like Earth surgical outfits? Like
I think so. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Here's the thing. And it's a detail of it's a part of this story that I find really interesting because I think it might be important. A lot of the descriptions of the things happening in the beings, and they're all very vague and hazy. As if they're just half remembered almost.
Yeah. Okay.
Because she doesn't describe the beings in detail. She just says 4 or 5 short humanoids wearing these surgical outfits and masks. Mm-hmm. She also, this is another one that's interesting. She has a memory that she was unable to tell. So, okay. She sees this long tunnel of light. And again, we're going to do the board from Control. It's a long tunnel of light / view of the sky. Okay. Same thing, somehow. Mm-hmm. She's not sure. It's in this limbo state where it could be one or the other, or both.
Not to jump too far, but there are times like this where whether it is something in the hypnotic regression or if it's something else, i.e. the kind of implanted faked memories in, the governmental abduction type stuff that we've talked about, there's like, this tickles a certain part of my brain in that way, where it's like the kind of dual nature of how she's viewing these things almost feels like a...
Are you thinking of are you remembering the screen memory concept?
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. No, I agree. It also tickles my brain in that way, and it's also really creepy. It genuinely creeps me out. So it's very dreamlike. It's very dreamlike.
For sure.
A lot of these descriptions. So she describes it as a long tunnel of light or a view of the sky, and that she feels that she has been transported to the inside of a large mountain or volcano. And when she's there, she's looking down this tunnel in this what I find interesting about the mountain and volcano comment, too, is it's not like she saw herself go inside one of those structures. She is inside something and in this very dream logic way knows it's either a mountain or a volcano. Yeah. And she looks and she sees another woman pinned down to an examination table / bed. And she says in her memory, she doesn't know whether it was that woman is one of the two friends that were also abducted, or if she was having an out-of-body experience and watching herself on the examination table.
Interesting. So the haziness covers herself as well, where she can't tell if that's her
She doesn't
or one
know.
of the other people. Okay.
And one of the most disturbing things Mona says is that she also sensed at one point having an immense pressure in her eyes, as if they were being torn out of their sockets. So it's very strange. There's a lot of different experiences of intense pressure being exerted upon these women. That's, again, very disconcerting. So for Mary Louise Smith, Dr. Sprinkle makes it sound like she suffered the worst during the hypnotic regression. I think that from discussions with these women after the fact and everything in the interviews, people tend to point to Mona as the one that they were the most worried about psychologically after everything went down. But during this hypnotic regression, Dr. Sprinkle makes it sound like Mary Louise Smith is experiencing the most suffering and reliving the memories as if they were happening again. Which also suggests perhaps she was the most traumatized that night. I don't know. He describes her as, quote, weeping, moaning, tossing her head, shuddering and shaking, etc. She remembers also being taken somewhere else separately from the other two women and having an unearthly fluid poured over her face, causing her to have trouble breathing. And in one of the retellings of this hypnosis, Mary Louise says something to the effect of, it seemed as if they were making a mold casting of her.
Oh, okay, sure.
What is also weird about this is something we'll get to a little bit, but later Mona would also come to remember the liquid being poured over her face and body.
Okay.
Dr. Sprinkle also takes note that Mary Louise's relief was palpable under hypnosis when she recounted seeing that streetlight, which was the indicator that the 80-minute period of missing time had ended and they were back in reality or whatever, back in the car.
Much like Narnia, it's around a telephone pole.
Yes.
Or a light post, yeah.
So, as for Elaine, she also recalls being spirited away from her friends, taken somewhere else. She was placed in some sort of darkly lit chamber that had a solitary window on the side, and she remembers that she could see multiple figures moving around back and forth in front of this window, and she knew that these figures were observing her. And she describes them as humanoid beings about 4 feet tall with gray skin and dark eyes. Now, that's UFO stuff. The most horrifying recollection from Elaine was the sense that there was something being placed around her neck, a contraption, as it's occasionally described. Interestingly, Dr. Sprinkle notes that Elaine originally thought it may have been a pair of hands choking her, trying to stop her to cry out and call for help from her friends. In
reality, it was the reverse bear trap from Saw.
Yes. Well, this is one of those this is one of those details where it does scratch that itch and makes me extremely creeped out about the idea of screen memories, multiple different conflicting memories of the things that were happening to them. So she originally tells him, like, I think that there's somebody strangling me with their hands to prevent me from calling out to my friends. No, actually, it's a contraption. It's a machine.
Yeah.
What the fuck? That's fucking creepy, man. That's fucking creepy. So
I really think there is something to be done in the horror movie space with screen memories and UFO abductions. Like, I think there is like a surrealist horror movie that would be fucking wild ass to be made using those concepts.
I agree. And the closest thing we just talked about on our Patreon somewhat recently in season 3 of The X-Files, Jose Chung's From Outer Space, because that's what happens in that episode where the girl, the girl from that episode who was maybe abducted by aliens also has the aliens may have been a screen memory because she also sees at one point under hypnosis military men.
Yeah.
It's go watch that episode, folks, if
good
you
one.
somehow haven't. So that's the closest we've got, but I agree. It would be sick to get a horror movie treatment of this. Maybe it exists. Let us know, listener.
Yeah. There have to be good UFO horror. Like
You'd
we haven't watched that many. There was that one that we watched that was like the girl like laid up in the house with the UFO. That one was pretty good.
I think that was No One Is Coming to Save You.
No One Will Save You.
No One Will
Save
Save You.
Yeah.
I remember thinking that one was all right.
Yeah, I think I liked it more than you did.
I think that's right. There's also the adaptation of Communion. Didn't we watch that together?
We did. We watched Communion.
It's not really
I liked
horror,
that movie.
but I really liked that movie, and it's just kind of surreal and odd. No, I would definitely like to see somebody make a scary ass tight 90-minute film. Don't let Blumhouse get a hold of it. Call it Screen Memory. I'll be there to watch it. Okay,
sure.
Check it out. So this doohickey is placed around her neck, and whenever she tried to speak or call out, the device would clamp down and prevent her from making noise. The device / hands, like, oh fuck that, man! It's so fucked up. So
the device,
the device would just clamp down when she tried to call out. Along with the conclusion that a device had been placed on her, Elaine also thought it was likely that some experiment was being conducted. Somehow she also felt that this experiment's purpose was to stress test her, quote, intellectual and emotional processes.
Okay.
So they're testing that, whatever, these alien beings.
Whoever it is.
/ unknown human. At one point in her recall, a bullet-shaped object about 1.5 inches in diameter is placed on the left side of her chest, and that's a spot where she would later experience like a spot of redness and pain. You know how we were talking about in episode 1, they had like patches of almost like burn marks? That's one spot where this bullet-shaped object would get placed, and then later she would have pain and redness there.
Okay.
Very odd. So Dr. Leo makes note of the similarities and dissimilarities between the subjects and their hypnotic recall. All three women were terribly anxious and fearful. He notes that this anxiety was coming from a particular thing within their experiences. And he says that for Mary Louise, this was the wall, which I think is the wall that we mentioned in part 1 from their memories, which they couldn't find in the follow-up excursions to the abduction location. Dr. Sprinkle says Mary Louise felt like she was, quote, afraid to move psychologically beyond this wall. All the women described entities with very little detail, but noticeably, none of the entities really seemed to have mouths. And they all also say something to the effect of these entities talking to them in their minds, but not with mouths.
Okay.
For Mona, the fearful object was the glaring red eye that was watching her, and she tells Dr. Sprinkle that she felt something, quote, evil or bad would be learned if she allowed the eye to control her. And then for Elaine, the fear was of a blackness, which I think is just like darkness. I don't...
Yeah.
This is just in Dr. Sprinkle's report.
Sure.
The evil eye and the psychological wall and the blackness in the Sprinkle report. The name's too whimsical to be talking about this shit. So, all three women were whisked away alone to a separate location, but each woman's location and method of examination seemed to be different. Also, it's notable that the women had interviews and hypnosis sessions individually and separated from each other before later doing the same stuff again with all three of them in the room, which is a thing that I think I commented on in episode 1 because I was reading a thing in the MUFON journal that made it sound like all three women were being subjected at the same time. So that's my mistake. But apparently it was all done separately, interview plus hypnosis. Then they all brought them together. And what he says is that bringing them together, what value this actually has, I don't know. But bringing them together and going through the experiences again would cause memory triggers in the women where they would say, this is, I think, where like, you know, oh, they poured liquid over my face and it felt like I was being put in a mold casting. And then another one would be like, oh my God, I remember that too. right?
Sure.
So here's what it says in Sprinkle's report. After the initial description of impressions, the women were invited to attend the additional hypnosis sessions so that each woman could observe the reaction of the other two women. During these sessions, there was much emotional reaction, which seemed to arise from two conditions. The compassion of the witnesses for their friend, who was reliving the experience and releasing emotional reactions to the experience. Also, it seems as if the description by one witness would trigger a memory on the part of another witness, even if the experiences seemed to be similar or different. So he concludes by saying this. In my opinion, each woman is describing a real, in quotes, experience, and they are using their intelligence and perceptivity as accurately as possible in order to describe the impressions which they obtained during the hypnotic regression session. Although there is uncertainty about their impressions, especially in regard to how each person could be transported out of the car and relocated in the car, the impressions during the loss of time experience are similar to those of other UFO witnesses who apparently have experienced an abduction and examination during their UFO sighting. Although it is not possible to claim absolutely that a physical examination and abduction has taken place, I believe that the tentative hypothesis of abduction and examination is the best hypothesis to explain the apparent loss of time experience, the apparent physical and emotional reactions of the witnesses to the UFO sighting, the anxiety and the reactions of the witnesses to their experiences which have occurred after their UFO sighting. So, I think it's interesting that he says there's no absolute proof here, but also this is our best explanation.
Yeah.
That there was an abduction and an examination. It's an interesting takeaway. I appreciate that he's not, committing to aliens abducted these people for sure. Mm-hmm. But he does at least say, what they think they have experienced was real, in a sense.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I come away from it feeling a little bit too, is like, if they aren't just making this stuff up whole cloth, which I don't know why that would be. I think they experienced something, and that there are elements to their recountings that probably have some ring of truth, even though, like I said, again, I think this story is also very much contaminated with the presence of aliens.
Yeah. It got added early, and it never got a chance to leave. No one ever was, from what I can see, was seriously considering this as something other than aliens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, we also, again, this is generally the story. But we also have Otto Billig's psychological evaluation of the three women and the abduction experience overall, which I'm not going to go deep on, but there's some interesting stuff from his interview. And some of the effects that night had on the women are pretty strange. Mona confided that she was terribly depressed and afraid for a very long time after the incident, fearing that soon her, quote, life would be destroyed. Hearing this stuff is also another thing that just is I don't know if creepy is the right word, but it is odd. It's an odd after effect of a UFO abduction. I've heard these stories of people being paranoid after their abductions and fearful that the UFO will return or whatever, and the aliens will return. But she just straight up says, my life is going to be destroyed, and that she would, quote, never see another birthday. The way she talks in the interview is as if she is certain she is going to die because of this.
Yeah.
And that is depressing, one. It would make your life rough. But two, it's really not a reaction that I recall hearing in a lot of UFO abduction cases.
No.
It stands out a bit.
Worrying about public ridicule is common. Even getting really into UFOs and going on to the constant talk circuit is pretty common. Getting into UFO researching, those things are common. Thinking that you're doomed is a bit unique.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess the point I'm getting at is it sounds to me like there is a kernel kernel of authentic trauma here. Whether or not it's actually because of the UFOs or just the weirdness of that night that brought it out in her, there does seem to be something terrible here. So when she meets with Bellig, Mona also says these ominous, extremely anxious things. She asks him if he knew that her mother had died a year after the abduction event, and then relates it back to her own, quote, weakened condition. She basically tells him that her mother had been in fine health until January of 1976, which would have been around the time that the UFO encounter happened. Her health goes south, and she eventually dies a year later from cancer. Bellig describes Mona as being this is the thing where I'm just telling you what Bellig said. I can't even really begin to speculate on this. He says that he thinks of her as being a, quote, very dependent person, and that she was especially dependent on her mother, and that since the abduction, Mona grew closer and closer to Mary Louise, and it perhaps suggests that the dependency was beginning to grow in that relationship as well. Now, this is another person's psychologizing of these people, okay? I don't know how accurate this is. And I will say also that it sort of feels like Otto Bellig is using this psychologizing to hand wave away some of the bizarreness of the UFO, like the bizarre details of the UFO abduction. Mona would also have recurring visitations that she believed were related to the UFO. Apparently, as she fell asleep one night, she found herself being watched by an eye in the darkness. And then later, as she laid there being watched by this eye, it manifests a second eye and becomes a pair of eyes. Bellig also makes a point to mention that all three women were churchgoers, but Mona was especially spiritual. And he has this thing in his book that's weird. So, from Otto Bellig's book, talking about Mona, it says this. A few months later, she had a strange encounter after the local television station had gone off the air. She was lying on the couch in her living room, and a sensation she believed to come from the spirit world made her turn around. When she did, she would not believe what she saw. A man had walked through the wall. He was standing in front of her snack bar, quote, 6 feet in front of me, and he had this golden hair. It was curly, and this beard. He could not be human. He wore a, quote, robe like those of biblical times, but was clad also in blue jeans rolled up to his knees. He was about 5 feet tall and had a, quote, look of authority. He did not express himself verbally, but talked to Mona's mind. His whole demeanor instilled a feeling of security, and she was no longer frightened as she had been during the last 6 months. Mona, who believed that her experiences with the flying saucer were of a spiritual nature, knew that the man must have been an angel sent by God, as, quote, God sent Christ here to die for us because he loved us, but he says he is coming back. But the next time, it's going to be terrible. She compared her experiences to those of Ezekiel. She had suffered as the prophet had suffered, and her suffering was for the good of the people. It had become her duty now to, quote, speak where the people can hear me. She felt that she must be willing to sacrifice her life to deliver the quote-unquote message to the people. However, up to the time of the interview, approximately 18 months after the encounter, she had not delivered her message.
Okay, so she goes off on the
spiritual,
almost the like not sainthood, but like borderline prophet,
burden of prophecy almost, yeah.
Yeah, like interesting. Okay, it is. I don't know what to make of this, but the fact that the kind of quote unquote main character of this story is the really religious one.
Yeah.
It just feels worth saying aloud on the podcast. Like,
sure.
The one who feels to have gotten a sense of greater purpose from this event is the one that most is looking for a greater purpose in their life. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think, and honestly, Bellig does kind of say some similar things about her.
Yeah.
So I think it's not, that might be the case.
Yeah, and that's not a dig on her at all. Like it just is. It's interesting. how people who already like there is a logical leap in religion.
Mm-hmm.
There is that we call faith. They're like the concept of faith, I think, primes you for a certain level of unreality, a certain level of the unexplainable that, if tuned correctly, can be seen as, can be filtered through the religious experience, you know?
Sure.
And it's interesting seeing that pop up in UFOs for me.
For sure. Let me put on a tinfoil hat.
Yeah.
For a second. Do you think maybe the trauma of a military abduction, using, whatever bizarre clandestine shit that they would do,
Yep,
would trigger a need to make a leap of faith that's a bit paranoid and delusional,
Yeah,
I'm not saying this is what happened, but it is fun to speculate.
But there is a direction to go with this story, where in being confronted with this thing that you don't remember all of, and then all of this turmoil around you, becoming a subject of ridicule, all of these things are in many ways, at least to some degree, small traumatic events, if not big traumatic events. And if you already are predisposed to something like, a belief in a certain religion or whatever, that could be then exacerbated and turned into a much bigger thing and you make sense of it through the lens that you know, which is, some form of Christian
spiritual
beliefs.
Yeah, that's fucking facts right there. Yeah, I'm the eeriness of the screen memory is comparison. It's just,
yeah,
it's such a weird story. You get used to a certain common theme and like very recurring bullshit from UFO abduction cases, stuff that eventually kind of, you're yawning. It's like, yeah, I've heard this fucking story before.
You get used to the template.
And then you run into this story and you're like, there's so many bizarre details, and everybody involved has bizarre details, and they're distinct. And I don't know why they would all, as individuals, go out and be three people making up bizarre, distinct details that are deeply traumatic and personal. You know what I mean? Like, it's a very weird story. I don't know whether they were abducted by the military. I don't know whether they were abducted by aliens. I don't know whether they were visited by, God, Christ.
I don't even know how their car went. Like,
That's so true.
They could have been spinning.
Either.
They could have had the wheels spinning at 85 miles per hour, 6 inches off the ground. I don't fucking know.
Yeah.
But it does feel like these women had an ordeal
something happened,
of some form or fashion.
I think. This is one of those stories where I came away from it going, I think something happened. I just don't know what. And those are always the most disconcerting. So, anyways, just to continue working on finishing this up here, Mary Louise had also suffered bizarre psychic side effects, such as experiencing a premonition or fear of fear and worry, and then suddenly receiving a call from her son-in-law to inform her that her father had died that morning. The son-in-law's father had died that morning. Yeah. Mary Louise also tells an odd story where this one's so weird. Mary Louise tells this weird story where she recalls waking up at 3 a.m. after the incident, and she felt compelled to return to the site of the abduction. And so she did so alone at 3 in the morning. And she gets out and she's there standing, and she recalls an icy wind suddenly knocking her flat on her ass. And what I find funny here is Belligan in his writing is like, we checked the weather report from this time and this place, and it had iced over at night and stuff, which would, he doesn't say this, but that would be sort of implied to be the explanation for what happened here. But what Mary Louise says is that she attributes the mysterious wind that knocked her over at 3 a.m. to the UFO that was presumably hovering above the Earth in space somewhere. That it had somehow done that.
Sure. Yeah. Sure. Why not? The UFO's hanging around sending winds. Sure.
She ran back to her car, shaking in fear, and noticed that 3 rings she typically wore mysteriously vanished from her fingers. 6 or 7 weeks after this incident, one of these rings spontaneously showed up on her doorstep. It would have been some 20 miles from the abduction site, and she describes being so terrified at the possibility that the beings from space had taken and then, for whatever reason, returned her ring, that she ends up throwing the ring, quote, as far away as she could.
Okay.
There was also apparently a bit of a debate between Mary Louise and Mona about the nature of their abduction. So again, from Billig. Mary Louise disputed Mona. She was able to discuss the matter freely now as sufficient time had elapsed since her abduction, making her feel released from the pledge of silence that she had given to the, quote, space people. They communicated to her, the manner of communication was not clear, that they journeyed to Earth to test their chances of survival on this planet and in its atmosphere. Quote, they told me something that doesn't make sense, that their solar system was dying, and they were searching for another planet. She emphasized that she, quote, had not been aware that a solar system could be dying, but backwards in my mind, I was told that maybe that was the reason for the mold. They are so intelligent. She reasoned further that it was possible to alter the appearance of humanoids from space, and, quote, it wouldn't be hard, because we have plastic surgeons here today that could make me look like you.
Okay. Sure.
So, I think what this is implying is that these beings perhaps wanted to come to Earth to see if they could survive here, because then they could come here and they could fashion human suits they could wear to blend in with us.
Through plastic surgery. All right.
Or, well, she's saying that plastic surgery, it's not a far leap that if something could travel the vast distances of space with technology, that they would have technology to create a mold of our faces and then take that and blend in or something, or maybe, you know, straight up pod people style. What's the movie?
Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Invasion of the Body. It's an Invasion of the Body Snatchers conclusion for her.
Yeah. By way of Mission Impossible, printed human skin masks.
Yeah.
All right.
So to conclude the stories of these three women, Mary Louise and Mona, as far as I could tell, remained friends for quite some time after the incident, but Elaine drifted away from the group. The way Billig describes it, Mary Louise and Mona were both becoming more paranoid. They were having less of a fun time in their lives. I mean, think about it. Their parrots fucking dying. Their rings are disappearing from their hands. They are haunted by eyes that watch them at night, and the presence of, you know, heavenly beings visit. It's a rough time for them. But for whatever reason, all of this seems to have had the opposite effect on Elaine, who pretty quickly disappears from the story. She apparently became, quote, more carefree and enjoyed life. They talk about her putting on big billowy dresses and big hats and having fun, happy as a lark, I think is the term that one of them uses. And Mary Louise said that Elaine was no longer the woman she once knew and saw her personality shift as funny. And what I think is maybe a little implied.
Okay,
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
I would say, look, the first person who has been bettered by an abduction, you know,
yeah, true. Although you could argue that some people were bettered in that they were able to make lots of money off.
Yeah,
stories, I
there
get
are
what
people
you're saying.
that
this is just positive disposition, not financial gain.
Yeah, they didn't milk their experience dry.
Right,
they just
right.
They came down with a new look on life.
Yes. But I think maybe the thing that is lightly implied here is that Elaine may have been replaced by the space people.
Yeah.
Which is wild. It's wild. It's such a crazy. It's so crazy. So both Mona and Mary Louise, they sort of became fixated on their abductions in a sense, and reportedly were both excited to have had an audience. They also both seemed interested in trying to get to the bottom of their experience in their own ways. So, you know, for Mona, the Bible. For Mary Louise, she would do stuff like, apparently she wrote to Betty Hill. And
okay.
talked with Betty Hill. And so they both seem to, it's not that they were excited to have an audience in that they were ready to just exploit that attention for money necessarily. I believe one of them even says, like, I was completely unimportant before, and now I have important people who care about what happened to me. They just straight up say that. And they both wanted to sort of kind of explore ways of understanding what happened to them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as for Otto Bellig, who wrote the psychohistory of UFOs and stuff,
he's now a young lion in New Japan Pro Wrestling.
And, well, he's dead, unfortunately.
Oh. There's a guy named Bolton Oleg who's
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I think like a Ukrainian fucking like mat wrestler that now wrestles for New Japan.
Nice.
Anyway.
Well, Billig's assessment of everything, kind of a boring conclusion, although he has some interesting stuff to say about it. He likens it all to the hypnagogic state between wakefulness and sleep. In other words, his assessment, to summarize what he seems to think may be responsible for these stories, is sleep paralysis.
Okay, sure.
That's basically, which, when you listen to some of the stuff they describe and how it functions and things, I'm like, yeah, I can see it feels sleep paralysis-y. I do get it. It also feels like he's kind of a little dismissive.
It feels like he's kind of skirting a couple of the weirder and you can say those are unconfirmed. There's like all these different things that are varying levels of confirmed and double checked and all these stuff throughout this story, but that feels like a thing that doesn't fully take into account everything, you know?
Yeah, I agree. The final word that I have on this is there is a Lexington Herald Leader article from July 26, 2012, titled "The Play, High Strangeness, Recalls Kentucky Women's 1976 Alien Abduction Claim." So, back in 2012, there was a play called High Strangeness that was, I think, a local Kentucky play about the events of that night when these three women were abducted. The play was written by Elizabeth Orndorff, and it sounds like this person had other previous weird plays, and that UFOs and the story of UFOs was just intriguing enough to get a whole play.
I feel like it's weirdly common for there to be like regional play productions based on both like UFO and cryptid encounters. I feel like I come across that weirdly regularly doing research for this podcast, that like someone at a playhouse in fucking Saskatoon did a fucking Bunyip play, like it feels, it's such a thing that you wouldn't expect. It also feels like the joke in like Rushmore or something, where all the plays that the guy writes are like really like weird things for a fucking high school kid to be obsessed with. Like it feels like that in a way that I find very charming. I love the idea of like local theater productions of these things.
Love to see this. Here's just a little piece from the paper. It says this: High Strangeness is about three women who go out one night and experience a frightening vision and loss of memory and time, and who end up becoming national celebrities and pariahs when their story is told in the National Enquirer. But it is set in the present day with cell phones, computers, and Papa John's pizza, and it includes other variations on the tale. I knew I didn't want to write the play as a docudrama, so it's inspired by that incident, but it's not that incident, Orndorff says. I just find it more interesting to make up stuff, so I took the basic source material and added to it. The play's focus is not on the abduction, but the aftermath of the incident and its effect on the women. It's about what they have to face in getting people to believe what they say and the conflict that creates for them. So, yeah, they made a play back in 2012.
Sick.
Based on this incident. And I wish I could have seen it. Yeah, I would have loved to have seen it.
I really should check that, like, people film stuff like that sometimes, and
that's
maybe
true.
There's like a fucking like camcorder rip of it on YouTube.
Ooh, I should look into that. That's a good point.
I never think about
didn't run
it, but
across
I just thought
that,
about it.
But,
so yeah.
Niall, that's the Kentucky Stanford abductions. it's another one of those stories that just, it hooked me very quickly. It's very interesting. Again, folks, there's more to read about it. We didn't cover every single detail, so, look it up. Check it out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You ready for a big question?
Oh, I'm ready.
Okay. Niall, in the last 508 episodes of the podcast, which story would you most like to see turned into a play?
Sure. Okay. That's interesting because we've done a lot of there are things that would be funny to try to turn into a stage production, things with a wild ass scope, like some of the stuff about aliens being time traveling humans from the far future with an entirely different society, and there's I imagine, or there's that guy that I did forever ago that his whole thing was writing his entire grand theory of biblical conspiracy as two different two screenplays that start with a pilot being shot out of the sky in World War II.
Wow.
That I still think about that one. That I came across it by the concept of the Tower of Babel being a hydrogen weapon,
right?
And that has stuck with me for so fucking long. I forget his name, but somebody has to try to put on a fucking rinky dink. I'm gonna go with that. Fuck it. That guy is like a stone cold legend of It Gets Weird as far as I'm concerned.
I have
such his website listing trying to figure out anyone that he crossed paths with in the industry to cite as backing up his stuff is fantastic. That whole thing. I need to go just for my own edification, just go back and look into that stuff again because it's so fun.
I was about to say, I really want to go back and look at that again because that story is so ridiculous and wild and just, I mean, to your point, a very unique character among, which is you'd think that in a world where you can talk about ghosts and aliens and Bigfoots and stuff, that most people would be unique, and it turns out the opposite is very much true.
Yeah, there's a lot of copycat stuff out there.
Yeah.
And this guy was an original.
That is a very original. I have two that I can't decide on.
Sure.
The one that immediately came to mind is I did a little while back, The Butterfly People. And I don't want them to do a play about the butterfly people that came to the town after the horrible tornado, because that feels fucked up. I want them to do a play explaining the butterfly people and their relationship to the consciousness raising stuff, which goes back to that crop circle and the conspiracy to cover up the existence of higher harmonic vibrations with the crop circle and stuff. And that's what I want the play to be about, because I came away from that one feeling like I actually really struggled to understand what the conspiracy people were talking about with regards to consciousness in that one. I'm trying to remember the terms they used. Mm-hmm. But they used a term where I remember looking up, and it took me to some guy, and I was like, cyclical consciousness raising something. It was something really weird. I just want a playwright to help me understand that, because I'm a visual learner. Maybe they could just, do a musical.
Sure.
To help me, understand. As long as it's not an opera, because then it has to be in Latin or whatever, and that would be, I wouldn't get that.
That's not what an opera means.
Or French. It's
we'll
French or Latin.
That,
you can't do anything other than French or Latin. And that's what I've never seen an opera, but that's my understanding.
Oh, I can tell. You didn't need to add that.
So that's the one that came to mind.
Valkyrie wants a word.
Oh, right. I forgot. The German, too. I do want to throw one other one out there, because this is, I think, my real answer is I want a deadly serious drama about the lives of Matthew and Thomas Reed. Which, those are the guys where Matt saw the UFO and had a weird experience and then hid away from the limelight, and then Thomas took it over like it was the family business to be a UFO guy who streams on right-wing streaming platforms about this stuff. I want that.
You know how in certain productions of like Frankenstein, the actors will switch roles on varying nights between the doctor and the monster?
Sure.
I think that it would be interesting to do an experiment like that with the Matthew, with the Reeds, or the Reed boys. You know, one they alternate shying away from the limelight and becoming a right-wing influencer.
Mm-hmm. I agree. That would actually be really good. That's what I want. Whew. Well, Niall, this is a good one. I enjoyed learning about all this shit. I hope you had a good time too.
I did.
Ready?
It was a bunch of weird shit that I don't know what to do with. So thanks.
I mean, that's all the good UFO cases now. Is like the less I know what to do with it, the more interesting it is. Now. So,
because like we said, there's so much template. Anyway.
Yeah.
You were wrapping up.
Yeah. Let's take care of some business.
All right. So if you want to follow the show, you can listen to this podcast on all the podcatchers. We're on all of them. If you listen to podcasts somewhere, look up It Gets Weird, and we're going to be there.
We're fucking everywhere, and that means Spotify.
It's true.
We're also on Blue Sky at It Gets Weird. Give us a follow there. We're on twitch.tv/itgetsweird. We just concluded our Pokemon Fire Red Nuzlocke run, and we beat the Elite Four and our rival. So that was a lot of fun. Be on the lookout for me and Colin to do some more stuff on there because we plan on doing it. We just don't know what we're going to do yet. We're going to find something else to play together. Email us, itgetsweirdpodcast@gmail.com. I think I asked a couple questions during this episode. Hit us up with some responses, and we might read it on the show. Just let us know how we should address you, and it might end up read aloud on the show. Your beautiful story or comment or whatever, or your hate mail, whatever you send us. But if you want to support us, and I know you do, you want to check out patreon.com/itgetsweird. We have a $1 tier. That's the tip. That's like the tip jar. You're saying, here's $1. Thanks for doing what you do. But if you want bonus content, all you have to do is pay $1 more for the $2 tier, or the best bang for your buck, the $5 tier. Both incredibly cheap tiers for Patreon. I do believe. At the $2 tier, you get It Gets Weird TV and Comic Break in between It Gets Weird TV. So you got 2 shows that we do every other week. We watch weird television. We read weird comic books. We just wrapped The X-Files, and then we wrapped, on Comic Break, we talked about Pat Kindlin's Nobody is in Control. So check out the $2 tier. But then if you want the most bang for your buck, and I know you do, $5 tier, you're going to get bonus content every single week. At that tier, you get World of Weird, the show where Niall and I talk about whatever the fuck we want to talk about. Anything that's on our minds. Usually that's movies and music and stuff, but we talk about a lot of other things too. Whether you donate to the $2 tier or the $5 tier, you get access to the main show 2 days early on Friday instead of Sunday, and you get access to the Discord with a pretty sizable community of weirdos just like yourself talking about weird shit. You know, Alex Jones has been in the news quite a bit. That's a topic of discussion right now. And I do believe I got a message that got, I think, immediately drowned out by the Alex Jones discussion, where people were telling me, Kyle, you're spot on assessment about communal living in a trailer park being more open to randomly hitting up your neighbors.
Yeah, I saw that.
So,
yeah.
So thanks for letting me know, folks. I do appreciate that.
We get if you want to be part of the It Gets Weird fact checking squad, you can join our Discord and tell us how we did.
Yes, please. And look, I'm joking around, but I am very much open to if I get something. I've said this many times on the show. If I got something wrong, if I missed something, very open to receiving information about it. I know I miss stuff. So please hit us up, itgetsweirdpodcast@gmail.com, but preferably donate and join the Discord so you can, talk to me more directly. You can send me a message on Discord saying, you fucking idiot, why didn't you talk about this shit in episode X?
Yeah.
And I'll be receptive to it.
Sure.
So please, patreon.com/itgetsweird, check it out. But if you can't donate, if money's tight right now, we get it. That's okay. Least you could do is tell your friends. Tell people about It Gets Weird podcast. We don't advertise. We're never going to put you through that bullshit. And believe me, we have people emailing us saying, come join our podcast consortium, which will force you to add ads into your show. And we ignore all those emails just for you people listening at home.
Yeah, we got one yesterday.
Sorry.
Not gonna happen.
It's not fucking happening. They're not. They don't even listen to this.
Is it funnier if I bleep that? I think it might be funnier if I bleep
maybe
who that was.
maybe.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what makes the final edit.
So please tell people about the show. Get more ears on It Gets Weird. And that's how we continue to grow and keep the show alive. So please tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell your congressman all about It Gets Weird podcast.
All right. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for continuing to support the show. This has been It Gets Weird, and I've been Niall.
And I'm Kyle, signing out.